Hello, Vasily.
Hi, Nika.
Hey, while we're waiting, maybe you can, waiting for more people, describe the half-an-hour meeting next week about Library of Care.
Okay. I just so basically I've just written that in the. I've just written this announcement. I'm just going to share the link. Okay, sorry, I've just arrived, so I'm already ready. Okay, I'll just share that. So I was thinking that maybe we could relaunch the Library of Care soon. Now we have a website, so I'd like to have a discussion with you guys about how we could maybe categorize our references and how we can structure the whole thing. So basically, everyone that is interested in being involved in this, just join. It's just going to be half an hour before the General Assembly next week.
Actually, we're not going to have a General Assembly next week, according to, but maybe this is Simona's time now to talk about like what was last agenda. Because next week is not, General Assembly is on the 27th. We decided to meet every other week, not every week, last time. That's my understanding. Simona?
What I'm supposed to know about the agenda?
No, not
decided
the last agenda that you wrote. You wrote
the minutes of the
yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, we decided to have an assembly on May 27 to assess the first month of new curators and the new organization we are trying to put in place during this month. In the meanwhile, we are having on the 6th an assembly on visual assemblies. Is it a general assembly or not?
Yeah, I think it's like everybody's welcome, but this is one of the projects of Museum of Care. This is not it's not everybody's everybody who wants to take a part of that, and I can invite for that assembly. So it will be with people who help organize it in Madrid, and Elizabeth will come and so on. So we will talk about how to organize a conversation between people from all around the world who speaks English, and a small group of Zapatistas who will be in offline space talking to us about their values, and then how to do that in the big square, visualizing that. So that will be the conversation, and me and Clive will present our ideas of how to design the framework for this to make sense without a lot of words, because they speak Spanish, we speak English. It will be probably difficult of translations and that, so on. And we don't know how to do it yet. So we can't kind of present anything yet. So that's why we were thinking we can meet in a small group and just have a brainstorming session, but it's not in secret about that, so everybody's welcome. And as a visual assembly will be very open situation, so of course the discussion about that is also very open. So that'll be the same time as generally we have an assembly, but from last assembly we decided that we're only going to meet 2 times a month, not 4 times a month. And that's why I propose in the same time to do this smaller meeting. That's my understanding.
And I invited, am I muted? No. I invited the people from Rent Evolution campaign for the same evening, but since it's a project that can be related to visual assemblies, in as much we can have visual assemblies during the happenings of this campaign, but it's not exactly the same thing. I think we could maybe shift this presentation to another evening.
Okay.
That could be the 13, or on the 13 we'll have another reading group. Is it?
Yeah, I don't know, Vasily. It's yeah. I don't know when is another group, but reading group. But now we have a working website, so maybe we can direct everybody to who wants to check it out to that, and just move more quickly in the assembly.
Normally, the reading groups are going to be on the 13th, 27th, 10th, etc. every 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll keep you posted, because I'm not quite sure about that yet. There are so many groups that are scheduled. So yeah, but we'll send you more info later.
Okay, so by the moment we'll have a small group on visual assemblies next week. Probably a reading group on the 13th, and maybe not a general assembly, but a discussion on Revolution campaign that could be on the 20th. Or, but we can adjust it over the time. So let us start with my presentation. I'm not very good at talking. Be aware of it. So I suggested to have this reading group because I was very interested in the connections between Carnival and revolution, and why do revolutions appear as carnivals, and why did we decide to have a carnival to celebrate David, and why did the commune appear as a moment of play, of a reversal of costumes, and as a carnival? Why did the commune appear as a carnival? The text I suggested to read were Bakhtin, of course, Bakhtin on Carnival, on Rabelais, and David's Possibilities, the first chapter, actually the first two sub-chapters of the first book of Possibilities, that is Joking and Avoidance and Hierarchies. But the whole chapter is interesting to our effect, because David explains the fundamental question that Bakhtin asks about Rabelais. That is, why is Rabelais incomprehensible in modern times? He appears like a very difficult author, while at his time it was self-evident what the meaning of his novels was. Sorry, and started to become incomprehensible in just a few years. In 1 century, the meaning of what he said had totally changed, and it got worse in the passing time. And this is the parallel of what Norbert Elias described as the reversal of modes between Rabelais and Queen Victoria. There was a complete shift of the meaning of stuff and of the body overall. What was the image of the body, of the joking body, of the changing and of expression of sex, of everything that is bodily. And sorry, Seth, can you mute yourself? Became sorry. Became an object in David's term of avoidance. And David's analysis is very interesting in showing how we can see this shift in an ethnological, from an ethnological point of view. And essentially from the point of view of the passage to an progressive abstraction of relationships, and of the affirmation of a logic of avoidance in our society. What was normal in medieval times about showing one's body, about talking of what is corporeal, dirty, and lower, the lower stratum of our life and of our society, became progressively something that cannot be shown, and the kind of relationship you should have with face to a superior, face to somebody who is set apart from you because he represents a higher stratum of society and is therefore set apart from the whole society as a whole, became something that you must do in the presence of everybody, and even when you are alone. And this is related to a progressive disruption of differences in society, and in a progressive focusing on just differences of wealth and on exchanges based on money and on wealth. The many differences that were peculiar of medieval times became just one difference, that of wealthy, that of wealth of money, and all people became apparently equal, in as much they were confronted just on one scale, that is that of wealth. But in fact, this meant destroying the complexity of a human being and the complexity of relationships, and making all other kind of differences something that pertains to the lower stratum, that is dirt and uncontrollable and related to the non-ordered part of life. What is important in Carnival is exactly the reaffirming of everything that is not ordered, that is not rational, that is not abstract. It is affirming the joking part of life. And while these two parts are always related, joking and avoidance appear together in societies, the carnivalesque process is one of destroying the difference that make hierarchy and avoidance, that let hierarchy and avoidance make sense. And that's why they result in a revolution, in a destruction of hierarchy. Bakhtin, on his part, understrikes the fact that Carnival is not only a subversion of hierarchy and of abstraction, and a call of the grotesque and of the ever-changing body. It's also a call to the golden age, to the Saturna. It's related to ancient Saturnalia that called back a golden age where everybody was equal, and the disordered, complex, dirty part of life was dominant and was the same for everybody. The fundamental feature of Carnival is about time and about destroying an order set on the past and on the abstraction. The Carnival is the moment where you celebrate the contradictions of life, the fact that life, and also the moment where you celebrate the passage, the changes in life, both marriage and death and birth. It celebrates the contradictory feature of life, and in this way it is revolutionary, and in this way also loaf and comic are revolutionary, and the kind of comic that Rabelais used is revolutionary in as much it shows contradictions. It shows that in life everything is mixed and everything is passing. The things that passes, the body, the sex, the reproduction, the food, the shitting, are have a comic effect in as much they show a disorder, a contradiction. They show that what we think is, they mock the order of an abstraction of our world and of our society. And this was the role of carnival feasts in Middle Age, and this is the same role of carnival revolutions in our age. Well, that's the general frame. Do you have comments or did you read the books?
I have one more question, too, very simple one to qualify.
Yeah.
So can you try to explain more what is avoidance?
Oh, yes, just a moment. The relations of avoidance are those of characterized by formality, by an extreme respect, and the obligation to stay clear for every bodily function of as eating, extraction, sex, and also violence is forbidden in face of a superior, and they are characterized by taboos and by the striving on the setting some people apart because they are too high. They cannot be, for example, they cannot be seen by inferiors. And the relations of avoidance stress on distinction, on and on abstraction. The person that is avoided should appears as if he or she was at a superior and unattainable level of existence. And it is very interesting. This feature is very interesting because the whole history of philosophy sets happiness as an abstraction, a getting rid of the body. And I thought, when reading it, I thought of Plato and of the body as a prison that the soul must get rid of. And there is a strong connection between the abstractification of life, between the idea of a soul, an ego that is separated from the world, and this idea of setting a part of society apart, separating. You separate the soul and the body in the same way you separate the representative of the whole society, the chief of the tribu, or from the rest of the people that are connected to the lower stratum of society is equal to the body, and the higher status that should command is connected to abstraction. This fundamental hierarchy between abstraction, the soul, and the body is is a common feature of our culture and of hierarchical cultures.
I don't know if I could just comment, just a question, like I know that there was the joking partners was this quite funny thing where you had people who were in some level equal, but I didn't necessarily understand all the anthropology behind it, like what their relationship was, but they were like particular things, and they make fun of each other and sort of in a mockery, like tell farting jokes and insult the other person constantly. And they were in a pair, but for the avoidance relationships, there's a pair of people, but they're not, one person is less important and they avoid being seen or having their body seen. Whereas what is the other person's, the important person in the avoidance relationships? What is their obligation in the avoidance? Do they?
The essential feature of avoidance is exactly that the superior person has not the same obligation, or they can choose not to have the same obligation. The same behavior that is absolutely forbidden for the lower person is in general allowed to the superior one. This doesn't mean that the superior one will always perform the forbidden actions, but that they can. And if they break the rules, this is familiarity. This is kind gesture toward the inferior, but they are not obliged to have this separated behavior. Not in all situations or cultures. For example, in some cases, when you break a rule of avoidance, there is an exchange in, for example, in horses, to repair the rule that has been broken, and that is the same for both parts. And this is what happens when in communities that are shifting to a culture based on exchanges and on making relationships more abstract. And this example is exactly the one that David uses to explain which is the relationship between the installing of property as a fundamental feature of our society, and the affirmation of relationships of avoidance in the whole society. He thinks that when exchanges are the most important feature of relationships, relationships of avoidance and the abstraction of relationships tends to affirm themselves on the whole society. I don't know if I was explaining myself well on this.
So say that last bit, that if there's more exchanges, then you get more relations of avoidance. Was that what you were saying? I didn't understand that.
Okay. I would like to find the quotation from David. But no, it's too long. David says when relationships of avoidance in the same abstract way that we witness in Euro-American societies are peculiar of societies based on exchange. And in this kind of societies, when you have a breaking of the rule of avoidance, this is repaired by an exchange. And if you give me a sec, I'll find the quotation. No, it's too long. So I'll send you the quotation later. Is anybody else has comments?
I think I found a quote that illustrates the point that you just made. I'm looking at the version that appeared in the journal. So I can't give you a page number, but the paragraph begins, it's about halfway in. It's a paragraph that begins, where rules of avoidance do exist and have been broken, very often some sort of formal exchange is required to set things straight. And he goes on to conclude the paragraph saying, because the act of exchanging goods itself transposes relations from the level of bodies and substances and back to that of abstract properties again. And so that's why in places where exchange value, where exchange takes value, that there are these rules of avoidance. And it made me, one of the things it made me think of was in the process of globalization, how today commodities are made, a single commodity could be made up of lots of other commodities that have been made from all over the world. And if we think of those sorts of commercial erasures that happen, or those sorts of social erasures, historical erasures that happen as a result of commercial exchange, are we able to think of those two as kinds of avoidances? Because it's basically, it's allowing the consumer to withdraw from the typically violent reality of how those commodities are made.
Oh, well, joking and avoidance are not exactly about violence. And they are also, in a way, the same, the two faces of the same reality. Joking relationships that are violent in they are giving of beds and taking of goods, but in a reciprocal way. They form when there is also a logic of avoidance. They are typical of people that are in an equal relationship inside a system of avoidance. And in this, from this point of view, they don't contradict hierarchy. They reaffirm it. And so I don't see a relationship between this and the violence that is at the basis of the production. But for the fact that how to say, that the relationship, well, everything that is not included in this abstract system of exchanges and of avoidance, that is capitalism, is falls into the bodily condition, into the lower condition. So it is normal that people that are outside the abstract system, outside the white hierarchy, are in a condition of violence and submitted to all the uncertainties of life and of the lower stratum of society and of life. This is inherently hierarchical. Only it sets apart in a way, it sets apart a whole society, in as much this whole society is regulated by wealth and by the ladder of money, of wealth, of of richness. On the other side, everything that is not included in this stair, in this hierarchy of money, falls equally inside the bodily disordered dirt side of life. And David makes an interesting connection between this vision of society and racism. And he says the same, the very fact that we think American society is a society of equals, differentiated only by money, puts all the other differences and race and women in a category apart, that falls apart from, that is set apart from rationality and even equality, and puts them in the bodily stratum of society, where it is normal to be submitted to violence and so on. This is the connection I see between the, I'm sorry if I repeated myself, but I hope I was clear enough.
So not, I don't know, modern isn't the right term, but a more recent example of the carnival that I think they're talking about would be actually Congo Square in New Orleans. Not just before this US Civil War, but after, in times of Jim Crow, where they would have like the cakewalks, and the enslaved people were actually able to gather their songs and dances and have their music, but they'd also do cakewalks where they would dress up and pretend to act like the silted upper class enslavers, the white people, so that they would basically make fun of them. The white people thought they're like, oh, those guys are trying to be like us, for them. but they were actually just making fun of them. They didn't, the enslavers weren't that smart. But it was a very, you could probably call it burlesque. It was very kind of grotesque and kind of grotesque in the Bakhtin sense of like very kind of making fun of it, made a very kind of exaggerated aspect of that. So I'm wondering if that could be maybe and maybe, you know, the comment about racism then applies more, but like that could be a more recent version of a carnival that we see.
Can I speak? Maybe, yeah. I don't know. We just speak when we want. Vasily, you should moderate us, maybe.
Am I the moderator? Oh, sorry,
I don't know.
I didn't realize. So, Nika,
can I speak?
The floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to ask. So the carnival is coming into this world where the relationship are structure on violence and hierarchy, and then they shake it down. Yeah, so you can compare. It's like a game and a play. So Carnival is a play that is kind of mixing everything up, you know, like a Venetian Carnival. For a couple of days, people just play whatever they want, or like sometimes it was for a couple of months. And then societies have certain rules. Doesn't matter if in any way, it's an abstract rules. And David is giving them examples from many different type of societies. It could be avoidance, avoiding the rules of hierarchy, or avoidance is always connected to violence and hierarchy. Could game be not violent?
Oh yes, of course. And joking and avoidance are not the only possible organization of society. There can also be, David says, relationships of common care and any sort of different relationship. He just points out how the two features are always related. They do appear together. And what's interesting is that the role of joking changed in our the development of our society in the last centuries, and in partly it became revolutionary. It stayed revolutionary. Joking is reversal of the order of society. But in the other part, it was joking when it is in relationship with avoidance is a reaffirmation of the hierarchy. The lower stratum is the one related to body. Okay, I'm related to body. I'm vulgar. I swear. I pick my nose. This is deeply this hierarchy is interiorized. It's not just an oppression from the upper stratum. It is how we see the world. We see the features that are peculiar of the upper stratum as more fine, more elegant, more refined. And when we affirm the body, even if it's in the form of a revolt, we affirm that what is the contrary of abstraction. That's why joking relationships are violent and they are equal, relationships of equality, but in as much they are just the reaffirmation of what is not avoidance, they confirm the hierarchy. On the other side, this I thought of beginning this exposition with how Rabelais notes that Bakhtin notes that Rabelais is incomprehensible because all of the jokes he made changed of meaning. Yes, that's what I said at the beginning, actually. The change of this meaning is related to the fact that what was grotesque and showing the contradictions of life became satirical, became putting the blame on behaviors, became a description of what's not pure, what shouldn't be, and not just a description of the true sides of life. Yes, Nika?
Maybe just me, but I still didn't understand, and I'm sorry to be maybe annoying. Yeah, so what I don't understand is you have this carnival that is changing everything upside down and kind of mixing up the social order, and it's a place of freedom. So Trotsky, for example, believed in a constant revolution. In a way, you constantly go ahead and like live inside of this carnival. And that's provide you, as Bakhtin was saying, in this space of freedom for everyone during the carnival. But then the normal life is could be arranged differently, but it's not the carnivalian life. It's a different type of life of rules. So like when David was talking about how traditional society in Latin America, for example, lived, they would disperse and live in a very different order, social orders, each group. It could be hierarchical, it could be egalitarian, it could be different stuff. And then they will come together once a year for a month, and then they will have these rituals that will be different from the arrangements, social arrangements before. So that was my understanding so far of how the human societies could live. So compared to what we're living now in capitalism and in this globalization, we're stuck in one order. We don't have a mechanism of how to rearrange it. We don't have a Venetian carnival from time to time when everybody is, you know, kind of dress up and become a president or fool or so on. So there is no mechanism like that. We have to, since Victorian times, since 500 years, so actually, we are living in this orders, and they express in every details of our life, including this culture of cancel culture. We cannot talk about being politically incorrect. It's not okay to argue with each other even, and so on and so forth. So, but if I understand correctly, you were trying to tell something else. You're trying to say that there is a culture of, there is a social order of carnival, but it's also social order of hierarchy, and then it's possible something else. Am I right?
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. There are two points of views. From one side, joking and avoidance are self-sustaining, are sustaining each other. They are part of the same logic, where joking affirms the equality of those that are that belong to the lower stratum, and is part of their relationship with an upper stratum that is abstract, set apart, and more universal. It's universal versus the concreteness of the body. But at the same time, Carnival is joking and isn't it. Joking affirms the contradiction, the disorder, and the body. And this affirmation is something like Benjamin's Augenblick. It's the remembrance of equality that stays, that is always there. And so I think the main difference between our times and medieval times is that the time of Carnival in medieval times was regulated. It had been proven impossible to prevent people from having festivals, and so, and also at that epoch, the Carnival was divided from the normal life. It was set apart. But carnivals often became revolts, and the carnivalesque often reemerges also in our times in the form of revolt. When we talked about La Commune, it was, we said La Commune was a carnival, was the eruption of play, of playfulness in society. And I think that play is something very different from game, because game entails rules, while play doesn't. Play is the disruption of rules. So, Rob?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I missed about the first half hour of this. So I'm not quite sure what's been said so far about this, but just trying to pick up, I think, on the point that you're making there, Simona. I wonder what people think. Is Carnival seen as something which challenges the status quo, or is Carnival something which reinforces the status quo? I'm of the view that it's the second rather than the first. It's a turning upside down of the hierarchy, but it doesn't challenge the hierarchy specifically as such. It leaves it intact, and it goes away afterwards. And questions which come up for me, which I just think are perhaps interesting, and you may have already touched on these in the first half hour, I don't know. The role of these sorts of things in contemporary society seems to me to be satire. And satire, again, is a safety valve. It allows us to laugh at our leaders without removing them. And I even would go further than that. I think elections are a similar sort of status as Carnival. Again, they're a very brief period of time when the electorate in a liberal democracy is given the right to have a say in what happens to them before normality is reimposed the following day. So, sorry, I'm just thinking a little bit out loud here, but yes, it's this question. Carnival, is it just a release valve for people to allow things to continue normally in the way satire is and the way elections are? Or is it actually, I think you're saying there in that last thing you were saying, Simona, are you drawing a link there with a kind of a revolt? Do you see Carnival as being part of a revolt? I don't see that myself. I see it as something quite separate to it.
What I was saying is that revolts take the form of carnivals. In both meanings, because they blow up rules and hierarchies, and because they always recall a mythical time of equality. And of equality in contradictions. I think this idea of disorder, of blowing up blowing up the differences, the categories that set people apart and that organize society, is a very important feature of Carnival in its reaffirming the contradictory character of reality. I don't think that elections have anything to do with Carnival. Actually, elections are to elect means to eligo, to put somebody, to choose somebody and put this somebody apart from the whole society to represent them, the society. This is exactly the logic of avoidance that consists exactly in making apart, making some people at different degrees more representative of the whole society. So the chief represents his group, and because he represents the group, he is set apart from the group. This is the same as our elected representatives. In elections, we just choose who shall be set apart from society to represent it. The logic is the logic of representance of abstraction is the same as the logic of avoidance.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in, but you go,
yeah.
go ahead. I just wanted to say something about just going back. That's actually interesting, this discussion about the how we actually define Carnival. It seems to me that in this paper, David defines Carnival. I mean, so let's get back to Bakhtin, because I think Graeber departs from him in two ways. First of all, he says there is no clear boundaries between low and high culture, which is something that he's not the first one to have said. This is one of the main critiques that have been made to Bakhtin. Simply just because, so Bakhtin seems to assume that Rabelais is basically the author of the people, which is a bit ridiculous when you think that when Rabelais was actually writing, almost like most people couldn't read, and so basically was writing for people for people who could and who actually belong to the high culture. So that's one point. And the second point is that I think, he says, page 45, he says, I suggest that Carnival is not simply a matter of inverting hierarchy, but of challenging its very basis by invoking radically different ways of conceiving the world. And the next page he goes on saying, Carnival rituals of rebellion might have served in the eyes of the masters as means of reinforcing social order, which is exactly what Rob was saying. But then he continues and say, but they had a notorious capacity to spiral out of their control. So it can be something that, that carnivals are basically something that you can't really control. And this is why they can be actually quite dangerous. I think the example that Simona was giving of the commune is actually quite interesting. I think some of the people like Alain Badiou were talking about carnival, trying to depart from also Kaiwa's definition of carnival, saying, well, carnival is not necessarily festive. It is really this particular moment, which is a political moment, when you kind of create a community of equals. And this is probably what Graeber is saying somehow. But maybe I might be wrong here. Maybe he doesn't want to say that, but I think this is more, like the definition of the carnival he has, and this could also help to understand what are the contemporary forms of carnival. And I'm thinking about like what James Scott was writing about hidden scripts, for example, all these infra resistance from the subordinates and from the people, moments like Occupy Wall Street. It is some sort of a carnival in that sense.
Yes, totally. Revolts are the moments when carnival appears in our times, and they are really the Benjaminian Augenblick, when the fundamental equality reappears and relationships of equality do reappear. But I don't agree with David on the boundaries between lower and higher status. In fact, the essential feature of carnival, of Bakhtinian carnival, is that for the time being, carnival was equal for everybody with no boundaries. And this is also the difference between carnival and spectacle and theater. Nobody is outside the carnival. And nobody is outside the blowing up rules of the revolution. The only thing Bakhtin and also David says is carnival can confirm the rule, can be the exception that confirms the rule, but much easily it gets out of control and becomes a real revolution and not just a golden age enclosed in a precise time.
So just comment to Rob, I would say like it's, I think that's a really interesting idea that like festivals are a sort of release valve, because you're supposed to work and do all your stuff, and then the pressure builds up and hey, people just want to party. So in order to keep that in place, they have a some type of festival. But if the church would organize it, it would be a pretty mundane festival, right? If it's a thing. And so every once in a while, so you have festivals, but then every once in a while you also have carnivals, and they want to have a carnival but not have it spiral out of control. And if they can do that, have a carnival and not have it spiral out of control and life goes back to normal, then the establishment wins. And if the carnival spirals out of control, then, you know, maybe power relations change in some way. But like, I would think it would be more easy to like have something go out of control during a carnival rather than everyday kind of ordinary time. But maybe not. Like if you went to the Nottingham, to the carnival in West London, there'd be a ton of police there. They'd be ready for it to spiral out of control, you know. And also probably a bunch of people are also just trying to have fun and party, and that like that might not, that kind of out of control might not be a thing. But I don't know. I thought it was useful to think about it as a release valve, and would it always be successful in releasing and then reestablishing authority?
Yeah, Michael, you just picked on exactly the example that I had in my mind, and that's the Notting Hill Carnival that we have here in London every year or so. And it starts off as a party, it starts off as a carnival, and then the police get involved later on in the evening, and it turns a little bit more edgy, as it were. I think that's the thing about, and I really don't accept this link between this idea that carnival and revolt are the same. I think they're very, very different. Carnival is fun. Carnival doesn't challenge the hierarchy. That's where revolt, that's where revolution actually starts to come in. And I think that they're two different things. Simona, I don't agree with you there.
So Rob, here, let's go talk about the body as a festival where you can be rude and burp and laugh and all those kinds of things, because that isn't so much about violence as about just allowing people to have an existence as a body rather than you're supposed to be polite to everybody. Yeah, I mean polite in a very distanced way, not polite.
Oren had sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce it.
I wanted to ask, like, if I understand, you said that once there is avoidance, then like joking can affirm avoidance, because then the people who joke are the lower people and the people that they avoid are the upper ones, or that. But then, and then you related this to the creation or of the ego, or this idea that in a sense you are different from your body. So, but then, like, okay, if there wouldn't be avoidance, then, and joking, only joking, I guess, would that be like all equals? If there wouldn't be some people that are set apart, and then there wouldn't be this abstraction of, you know, that says that in reality you are different from your body. I don't know if I explain.
Well, the joking that is in cause is a peculiar kind of joking. It's actually the notion of joking and avoidance are taken from anthropologists who observed other people, other ethnical groups, customs, and they are interesting concepts exactly because the anthropologists that observed them hadn't a word in European language, a concept to describe this kind of relationships. And so these two concepts together are able to shed a light on our culture from a different point of view. Just like when totem started to be observed, then became a tool to observe what's happening in some occasions inside our society. So when using the term joking, I'm not just talking of jokes as they happen in our society. I'm talking of the peculiar kind of jokes that actually happen between young males in our society. Think of I don't know if you have seen Gran Torino, a film of Clint Eastwood. It's a very funny and interesting how it teaches the young man how male relationships should be, and he enters a barber in a barber shop. The barber is a friend of his, and he starts insulting him, and the barber insults him back. And this is a joking relationship. It is a sort of ritual violence between friends, not a real violence. And this kind of relationship is, following David, related to the mirror of avoidance. This is the kind of relationship by which you affirm with your friend or your cousin, we are equals, we are friends, and that's why we can insult each other, we can make mock attacks on each other, and we can freely take the other's goods, knowing that the other one will take our goods in another occasion. This is a very unequal relationship in time, but it is about equality, and it is about affirming we are friends and we are equal in a frame where there are the unequal, those that are set apart because they are superior and they represent a part of society, and they are in a higher position. So the two features are related and mirroring each other. But the equal part of this relationship as in itself the seeds of equality, and this is its revolutionary content of blowing up hierarchies. And to answer Rob, well, I think revolution is exactly having fun. It is not creating a new order and a new abstract. It's not about creating a new abstract order or pushing such an order on society. It's Emma Goldwyn said if the there's no dancing, this is not my revolution. It is exactly affirming equality and blowing up the order. It's the constituent power. Then I object both to Tony Negri and to David that I don't think we can get rid of a constituted power, of rules and structures. But I do think that revolution is about destroying this, the power, the hierarchy patterns of society, and this is actually fun. And also there is a peculiar revolutionary feature of comic, of love of comedians, in as much the comic is exactly about showing the contradiction, showing where the frame, the result of love is you love when you see that what you believed to be the order you counted on doesn't work. There is a rupture in this order, and you also see that this break of the order is not menacing you. This is fun. Expecting something and having this expectation not fulfilled by something that goes outside your expectation, that contradicts them. So, so yes, in my opinion, having fun is the very essence of a revolution and of equality.
Could I ask a question? So I was wondering, because earlier you said that like you made a distinction between play and games, right? So like they're fundamentally different things, and games are in a sense representative of like a structure, an abstract like rule set already, if I understood correctly. And if you view like revolution or whatever as like it sounds to me like you identify that with play, as in it doesn't have a structure. I like personally like I don't really feel like I see a distinction, so I'm wondering why like why you think that, because I feel like I mean I can understand like a moment of play when you like at the moment of inception of a game, kind of when you create a new game, maybe that's sort of different than play. Or a game to me, because it's like you're creating new rules, right? But at the same time, I feel like that's the only difference. That's the only kind of like, well, I mean, difference between or a different type of game I can see, because I feel like all games or any kind of play has inherent within it like certain rules. Like you said, even with comedians, you know, there are rules to, I think, to like comedy. I mean, if there's something that makes something funny and something that isn't funny, right? And in a sense, even if like maybe they're implicit rules and they're not already like, sorry, maybe they're not already like ossified and known, maybe that's a distinction. But I'm just, yeah, I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, this is just a distinction I made. I didn't find it in the sacred text of David, but I think play, the essential feature of play is freedom. And yes, of course, you can have games and you can play by the rules. There is nothing wrong in it, but not necessarily. You are free to have rules or not to have them. But the playful character of a revolution is about freedom, is about not having rules, and not having rules as equals. Is about freedom and equality. While of course games are fun and you can set any rule you want, it's just not a free fun. This is what counts for me. The difference that is important to me. But I'm not saying that games are bad. I'm saying that this is an essential feature of mockery. And by the way, I like very much that the acronym of the Museum of Care is MOC. That also means to joke, to have fun, to pull the leg. But yes, it's all about, in my opinion, about breaking rules, about not having rules, about freedom.
Yes. Just because of what Rob said, and then it was partly answered by Ben just after, and you, Simona, but just drawing on personal experience that I had to move to a small village in Switzerland where I was very not familiar with the ritual of Carnival. And there, I mean, of course it was playing, but you could not imagine how much energy was put into it. Like they started to think about it in September for March. And then I discovered that kids could actually not go to school anymore, and I mean, teacher was actually skipping school also, and all this energy. I mean, listening to you guys, it was really reminding me of what Pierre Clastre was actually saying, that people would actually, when they walk only 3-4 hours, the rest of the time is actually dedicated to. Thank you. It was actually dedicated to challenge hierarchy or social order, or like maintaining it in some ways, or making sure that a person will not take the power over other person. I mean, such a complex structure that I'm not going to revisit here, but then I realized over there that that actually it was, of course, playful, but the amount of energy and was actually really it was so much work, you know, but also this kind of work that is actually challenging productivity for so many months. And then the last months, I mean, nobody was working anymore. And then suddenly it was just for one day or few hours. So in this sense, I think Carnival is a revolution because it's actually showing how much power the people can have working together. And I mean, in this case, especially because the king and the queen of the carnival was giving the key of the city, and sometimes they were lost, drunk, and they couldn't find it anymore. So we didn't know, you know, the day after if the hierarchy was back or not. I mean, it was such a mess. But I mean, in this sense, I think, I don't know, I think it's really, I agree with you. It could be a revolution, and it looks like it. And people are working so much to challenge. Yeah, I don't know, I'm getting lost, but I'm sure you got the point right.
Yeah, I'd add to that, it's how you do it as well, right? If you look at Carnival as joking, or as like here in the United States, Stephen Colbert had that show during the Bush administration where he pretended to be a conservative. He's clearly a liberal, but other conservatives that he was making fun of loved the show because of the jokes he was making. So it was satire, but it wasn't really changing anything. And then you even say, now he's not that character anymore, but you'll hear him even during the Trump administration, as much as he hated Trump, he would respect the office, right? He'd make fun of the person, but make sure to leave room to respect the office. And so you can very clearly use satire as a release valve, but you can also use it as a challenge. And I think that's anyone who tries to engage in this tactic needs to be very aware of how you go about it, of are you creating a release valve or are you creating a challenge? Because it could, depending on how you go about it, it could be either.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I think there are many things that look completely harmless to government and to the power, but can actually turn pretty dangerous and pretty revolutionary. I'm thinking about those banquets that were held during the July monarchy in France, and they were just like dinners where we were talking about politics and we were toasting to the Republic that will come, and I'm sure that the king at the time found that completely ridiculous, and I am sure that the most radical revolutionaries were thinking that it was also completely harmless, and there was something else to do, more radical, and it seems that it's actually the starting point of the third revolution. So we never know, basically, and this is one of the only thing that we know about revolution, that many historians worked about that, but just we don't know how it happens. Just like completely, it's a completely we don't have any explanations. Basically, we can't predict it at all. Another thing I wanted to say about Bakhtin is that he's got another mention, which is this mention of polyphony, those polyphonic novels. That's actually quite interesting, because, and it gets back to what TJ was saying last time about the way David writes his book. Thinking about Lost People, his first book, and the last book about bullshit jobs. It is very much that. I think the form of some of his books tries to mimic what Dostoevsky and Rabelais and maybe like more Virginia Woolf did in their novels.
Yeah, may I jump in or? I struggle with my COVID before speaking. So yes, what you say about Carnival in Switzerland is very interesting. I was in, well, we have carnivals in Bologna, but they are really boring. While I saw something of the like in Viareggio Carnival. It's very organized. It's a game, not a play. And this is the same situation. People work on it for months in communities, and it's very, very important for the people of this city. Yet, what's relevant for me in Carnival is the spirit it has. And in Viareggio Carnival, there was no such freedom and joke. There was satirical moments. There were satirical moments. And it's interesting because this is exactly what Bakhtin describes as the disgregation of Rabelais' word. The Gargantua became incomprehensible in the following decades, because what was simply fun, comic, and affirming the contradictions of life became satira. How do you say in English? Satirical. Became an exposition of what is wrong, and not an exposition of both sides of life. I think the real resurgence of the spirit of Carnival was in Zuccotti Park. It is in the explosions of freedom that we have in our society. I remember once in our ice-breaking talks, the question was, when is it that you felt free in your life? And I remember the Bologna's 77 time. The movement at that epoch was a revolution, actually, and it was the breaking of all rules. It was showing the possibility of breaking rules, of not having a hierarchy, and it was quite a fundamental experience in my life, seeing the possibility of it. And it was Carnival, actually, with masquerades and fun, and making fun of power and hierarchies. So satire is not changing the order, it's just reaffirming it. And as for polyphony, yes, it's strongly connected to Carnival, because the essence of polyphony is exactly the fact that it doesn't exist one order, one truth, one author that knows everything, but it exists the concreteness of bodies, of singular people in their relationships, and each person in Dostoevsky's books represents a different truth that is true at the same level of others. It's just, and at the same time, it's a personal and individual truth. So this corporeity and this being equal of bodies in their being ever becoming and different is, to me, the essential feature of Carnival and of love. This showing of the inherent contradiction of life and of the changing body.
I think we'll have to wrap up soon. There may be time for 2 or 3 more interventions. Anyone who didn't say anything and who want to say something, maybe, or if not, someone who already said something and still has something to say?
Nika?
Nika, you're mute.
So my understanding, my current understanding is the differences between Bakunin and Trotsky is that Trotsky was talking about permanent revolution, as permanent change of rules. And that's how he understands freedom. And then Bakhtin understand it's more like a traditional culture. So when you have a different type of games, rules, and then you come together to negotiate it for that particular moment. So that's allow people to skip from one place to another, and for some people to be free if they want to, and for some people to be stuck in certain societies, a family, or like, you know, tribe, or whatever they have. And I don't know, but you with his moment, revolutionary moment, is that like Trotsky, Maoist, all that stuff, yeah? So am I right? It's, to my like overall understanding of the idea of game and play and the carnival and societies that is unfree. Because it's a practical question for myself, how I should live in a way, you know. For me, I always try to have some rules because I need to survive, and, you know, have to have a relationship and so on and so forth. But I'm always trying to create a structure in which I can jump out. And that's how I understand Bakhtin in this case. I would like to ask, yeah, so what Simona, do you think about that? How it's related?
I hope that it was for Vasily.
Okay, then Vasily, maybe Vasily can answer my burning question. If it's possible, or somebody else.
To be honest, I don't know. But I'll think about it, and I'll come up with an answer next time.
Okay.
Because for me, it's the possibility to jump out. A community is essential. But I cannot answer on Bakhtin and Trotsky and Badiou also. But
it looks like you were like talking like Trotskys in a way, a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
That was like the main point, you know, just like, okay, we have this suppressive structures, they built this and that way, and then the carnival is a moment of freedom. So and rearranging the rules. So that was my understanding of this conversation. But probably Vasily right that we should wrap up now because we're already almost 2 hours, and then but this was really interesting, and I still have questions.
Oh, well, Carnival is about blowing up all rules and hierarchy.
Yeah, that's what Trotsky was saying. Exactly, that was
yeah.
his point. He was saying permanent revolution. He was saying, okay, we blow up Russia, now go ahead and blow up Germany, and then this and that. So that was, and then all these Trotskyist groups around the world, you know, I think they keep the legacy.
But I don't think you can have a society without rules. You maybe can have a society with the minimum of hierarchy.
Yes, I agree.
Hierarchy, but not.
Yeah, but Trotsky was thinking that the revolution as revolution and rules for all the world, as well as Marx, and that's why they expelled Bakhtin, because Bakhtin didn't think that the rules should be for everyone the same rules. He was thinking about federations of different people with different rules, you know, that come together to sometimes and can leave any times, and that's a very different map of the world. You know, so it's a game inside, like a small enclaves, and then it's a play altogether. So that's how I see it. But probably we should find a text that's related to that, and it will be interesting for me at least to continue this conversation.
Maybe I have one more completely uneducated thought, but I mean, it sounds kind of like something that occurred to me is also like closed versus open games, right? Because I mean, if you have a, I think it's one of the things that can make a game either very fun or extremely frustrating and emotionally intense. I mean, if you bet on something, for example, if what happens inside the game has implications in other games, right? And that's kind of, I think, connected also to, I mean, sort of like anarchism in general has like, obviously this is very organized and there are a lot of rules, right? But the fundamental point is that you don't get, you know, shot or there's no one with a gun. It's like, you know, so it doesn't, the, you know, game outside of the rules, which is like, for example, life and death and guns and all that, you know, there's no implications on that. So it's basically, you can reorganize the rules without, or exit the game or lose the game without losing other games in a sense. I don't know, maybe this is just a thought, but.
Maybe we should wrap up and discuss it another time. But Carnival is not
Sorry,
all the life. I mean, think of the rules and organization George was speaking of before, to cooperate to product chariots for Carnival. You need organization and rules. But the point is, you can, being free to live is essential to this. But this is about method of consensus. We already talked about it. Sorry, Ali.
About the point that Nika told, I want to mention a little thing. I think that it's really depend on how we see the world. It's about our ideology. If we are believing in revolutionary thought, if we are Leninist, I think that Trotsky is very near to the Lenin after between the movement after Lenin, and if we saw the things that Trotsky down in his time, I think that we can accept more Trotsky than Bakhtin, because I think that Bakhtin has deviated from the Leninism and the Marxism. So, but because of your question that how we can know what we should do in our life, I think that Lenin actually himself answered this question in his books. What should we down in when we are living in imperialism world? And I think that it's it can answer our question in 221 again. Thank you.
Maybe we should read the Lenin book once in the reading group. That will be cool. What should be done? And ask my Russian friends who has the name of artistic group, what should be done to come and facilitate it. So that's, I didn't read this book since I was a child in a school. It will be a really fun experience for me. Thank you, Ali, for mentioning.
I read Tolstoy's what must be done.
Was there any way, I didn't really get, I remember reading this before, and it's a long time since I've looked at this piece, but like where the theory of hierarchy comes out, because we talked about joking and we talked about avoidance relations, but how is it that they build, one thinks about building hierarchy out of that? Because we kind of don't have most of us don't have a theory of hierarchy. We just know that it exists. You know, oh, that person's more important and that person's like this, and you might not like it, but like there's some kind of theory about why it was built, how it emerged in this essay, or no?
I couldn't unmute myself. In this essay, there is a theory about how the peculiar form of hierarchy we have in modern Euro-American society emerged. Not any hierarchy all over the world. David says some form of hierarchy normally tends to emerge. We can't hope to get altogether rid of hierarchy, but it can be reduced to the lower level possible. And we can dream of a society without, almost without hierarchy. But in this book, he doesn't describe how it emerges. He makes interesting remarks about how it is connected with abstraction, he has a different interpretation of Indian castas system. And he says the difference between castas is about their being representative, their level of abstraction, their being representative of a higher level, they're being more representative of strata of society. And this is an interesting concept I must think over some more.
But I don't think David was ever thinking it's good to get rid of hierarchy, because the human relationship was very complicated and hierarchies always exist. And the one of the, like, for example, hierarchy between kids and adults, you know, so like a 3 years old will always be compared to, like, you know, 20 or 30 in a different status. And I think he was given like a good example of positive hierarchy, is hierarchy between teacher and student, because teacher is trying to teach student as much as he or she can in order for the students to become equal. So it's never like, you know, hierarchy or not hierarchy. It's always this kind of playful relationship. So I think that's a very, very big difference between, I'm coming back between Trotsky and Bakunin, because I'm reading now Bakunin, because he's like, you know, the idea of like, this is the world that we want to see, and this is how we should shape it. And что делать, what should be done by Lenin, is exactly the practical approach. Let's do this and the world will become a better place. But I think Bakunin was just smarter and more like complicated, and, you know, so that's my current understanding of the situation.
Well, it is the last page of the chapter. He says one of the dangers of model terms is that they make hierarchy, usually defined in 2 or 3 different ways at once, as an inevitable feature of social life. To a certain degree, of course, it is. There will always be nested sets of categories, and people will always have a tendency to rank some things as better or worse than others. But none of this has any necessary social implication one way or another. What we are used to thinking of as social hierarchies are particular constellations of these principles. And as Arthur Lovejoy pointed out, fairly unstable ones. And also he says, any genuinely egalitarian system must, it seems, adopt equivalent mechanism to stand guard against its own deeply embedded hierarchical possibilities. But of course, what hierarchy is a muddled term. It can mean many things, and maybe the very problem with it is to make it stable and to base it on level of abstraction.
Yeah.
Of representativeness of society.
So I don't know if people want to go or if we want to drag on. I had just a few other kind of comments or questions, but like, there's that Norbert Elias guy who writes about the history of civilizations and manners. And for Norbert Elias says, look, like people have manners because they got to be respectful to one another, because somebody doesn't want to see you pick your nose or burp or vomit in the corner. So, and if you don't live long and you're not going to see this person, it doesn't really matter, says Norbert Elias. You can just do stuff and go. But if you think I'm gonna, it's not a time of the plague, or I'm doing reasonably well, I'm not gonna die soon, I'm not gonna have to leave soon, there's a stable social situation, in a month from now, I'm still gonna know this person, then you try to be very polite to that person because you'll need to be polite to that person. And so you're hiding your body, you're not showing burping or ill-mannered things because you'll know that person for longer. But and so that's like the temporality is the longer you're going to live, the more manners you have. But like I would always like, I was trying to understand because normally I would have always thought of economies of exchange as like in a gift economy, in a village, you give something and then it's like a little minor debt. You get something, and because you've been given something, you'll keep your relationship together with other people because the gift, you owe the gift. And so you're going to pay them back. There's time, right? Whereas if you trade between two villages, you just go to the next village and say, I'll give you my copper pots for your beads. And that's it. You go home, you don't need to meet them again. And so there's no temporality. And so the idea of avoidance, if like a greater level of exchange focus creates avoidance, then I wondered that's a different temporality, like than Norbert Elias. I don't know. Does that question make sense or no?
Yes, it makes sense for me. It makes sense because if you're in a more complicated relationship with the person, then you do accept some level of inequality. And if you like it's in the debt, David described it very well. If you just exchange equally, that means relationship is finished. I'm just paying you €5, you get it, and that's it, we're done. We don't have any inequality, but we also don't have any relationship. So all the relationship is an inequality and hierarchy, and that's how our society constitutes itself. It should be playful in this case. So otherwise, it would not be a human society.
Yeah, I mean, it still doesn't really explain why hierarchy emerges, but like I would have always thought that in terms of like that the exchange is that if you just trade and you don't care about the other person, you just get what you want. But I think what often happens in hierarchies is a lot of the people who trade and exchange things, they continue their business relationship and they do develop a relationship. But it just creates it's like a communism of the rich, if you will. But they create a divide. And so that's where you can imagine a politeness and a larger scale economy of sharing between rich people, which are, is clearly often happens. But then you don't have that, but they still require other people to use avoidance. And
because they don't change the rules. Yeah.
What you are describing is the basic concept of the game theory, and that is of an economical, mathematical reading of human relationships. But this frame requires that you pay back, exactly. And the temporality is essential in the theory of games to explain why cooperation wins. Inside this frame, nonetheless. This but it's true that human relationship is erased, is cancelled by this payback relationship. And this is not the only possible relationship. When actually possibilities starts exactly with Norbert Elias' remark about the changing of manners during the last centuries. Specifically, now I find the quotes more easily. Elias speaks of a broad advance of thresholds of shame and embarrassment, an increasing tendency to repress open displays of anger or extreme emotions, but even more displays of or references to bodily functions in everyday interactions. Basic standards of how one was expected to eat, drink, sleep, excrete, make love shifted almost completely. The transition from the world of Rabelais and to that of Queen Victoria was in historical terms so remarkably rapid, a mere 3 centuries, that historians are puzzled over the phenomenon ever since Elias first pointed it out. And this shift in manners is what David connects to avoidance. And then he connects avoidance to the abstractification of relationships that is connected to the rise of capitalism and to the building up of a society based on paying back. But the reason why, sorry, you claim a right to some good doesn't need to be that you have a payback. In medieval times, it was because you belonged to a family, a city, a corporation, a class, aristocracy, or peasants, or clerks. And the transition is also in the fact that people no longer claim the right to a good on the basis of their belonging to a class or a group, but they claim this right on the basis of their wealth, on the basis of money and debt. But this is not the only way to organize a society, even in a hierarchical frame.
maybe we should stop for now and we just like do another reading group because we're like in the third hour. Yeah, I just want to say that next one will be on the 13th of May, and it will be Alexei Yurchak, and I really invite everybody to come. He's an amazing person, so I will share his article that we're going to read, and that will be about the Lenin corpse. So coming back, Simona, to your quote about what is corpse, and about, you know, mummification and museums and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm really happy that he's coming. I was reading his book, it's supposed to be Forever Until It's Always Gone, about Soviet Union, and he's an anthropologist from Berkeley and France. Okay, so thank you, Simona. That was really great. And thank you everybody who come. It was very important for me. Okay.
Next time we do a carnival discussion, we'll have to drink wine and
I do
have funny hats on.
Hats, yes, we do have hats. Need to have hats.
And tell rude jokes.
Yes.
Yeah, we should all do the offline carnival. Maybe that should be one of our tasks. You know, we all live in a different part of the world, but maybe we can come together. Let's say in Madrid this year.
Steve, have you got any rude jokes?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.